Welcome to Spiritual as Fuck,
Spiritual as Fuck,
a podcast where we explore everything outside of the ordinary. I'm Liz Volpe. I'm a social entrepreneur, now psychic medium, teacher and mentor, with a huge passion to inspire people to dream big and change the world.
I'm Diane Driscoll, a coach, facilitator and speaker. I'm also a psychic intuitive, learning to incorporate my spiritual gifts into my life and business.
We're here today to share real and raw spiritual stories. It's going to give you a safe space to challenge what's normal and have some serious fun along the way.
We hope you're ready to get spiritual as fuck. This episode is a marvel of the powers of manifestation. Liz and I recently had the opportunity to do a live in-person interview with the Master of Mediumship, John Edward. And many of our listeners will already be familiar with John's work, as he is the man responsible for bringing the word psychic medium into our living rooms through his TV show Crossing Over, which aired in the early 2000s. John is the world's foremost psychic medium, a lecturer, and the author of numerous critically acclaimed New York Times best-selling books. He is also a beautifully down-to-earth guy who we loved hanging out with.
So Diane and I are pretty excited today because we are here with what we consider to be the world's best psychic medium. Give
Wow.
you a good introduction here. He has toured the world. His hit TV show, Crossing Over, I guess, really announced to the world what a psychic medium was. And for me personally, I remember watching that show and being like, this is real. Oh my goodness, this is actually real. And had such, he's had such an incredible impact on hundreds, if not thousands and thousands of people across the world. Now I'm really excited because I know that he's been on Oprah,
Yes.
and Ellen, and now he's on Spiritual as Fuck. So what else can you do after this? So I'd like to welcome John Edward.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the intro.
Oh, I have to say, actually, when we got the interview, I was like, I've got to dig out this book because on my spiritual journey in my 20s, this was actually the first book that I ever bought.
Oh, wow.
So I was like, oh,
Yeah,
my
it had the
goodness.
date inside.
Who would have
Wow.
thought? So this is like 20 years old, this book. But obviously, a lot of us know you from being on TV and from touring the world. And I guess I'd love to start off by thinking back to the old John and going all the way back.
This is the old John.
Yeah, it's the same John. But what did life look like before being in this industry?
So I started doing this like in 1987, right? So I jokingly say, and actually 1985, what am I saying? It was 1985, so it was like way back in the 1900s. But the reality is, for me, I was 15.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
my entire life has been this work. Sometimes I feel like this was just why I'm here. Like this was my calling, or like this is who I am, and it's what I do. And yeah, I don't have a concept really of like I'm doing this way longer than when I first started.
Oh, that's interesting. 15 years old. So your friends were probably out on their bike, doing skating. Like, was that hard, like between like what you knew to be true and what your friends thought?
I had always resonated more with adults and people like that were older than me. But I wound up like being at psychic fairs at 16 years old, and I was hanging out with people that were 40 and above, and my friends were like drinking beer in a parking lot somewhere.
Yeah.
So my Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sundays were doing this work. So I didn't have that teenage angst experience. I felt like I had my school life and then I had my psychic life while I was, trying to figure out what I was going to do with my career. Like, what did I want to do? And that was going to be healthcare, and my background comes out of healthcare, but this took over.
Yeah. And your grandmother was psychic, so you grew up around that as well, didn't you? You had that in your family. So I think it's different when you grow up in that environment, it becomes normal.
Yeah, my Italian side, my grandmother, my mom, and the rest of the family would have psychics all the time. They used to do like house parties and seances and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, it was kind of like a thing.
Yeah.
Like, this is what they do.
Yeah.
My dad was not a fan of the subject matter, and he would forbid me from being around it. And my mom pretty much, like, for the entirety of my life, kept me away from it. They wound up divorcing when I was about 13, and we moved into my grandma's house, which was where they had all the people come. But by that age, I had adopted a lot of his, this is not real, this is what the girls do, you know, this is kind of like, he would kind of like tongue-in-cheek make fun of them. So I would tongue-in-cheek sarcastically make fun of them, but not because like he and I were so close, but it just made sense what he was saying. And like, I couldn't understand how somebody could flip a tarot card and give somebody information. So I was brutal. I was really bad. I was a really, really brutal teenager. Yeah, it was a good thing. It was a really good thing.
We talk about this, that, you know, we're so skeptical, and it's a good thing. You need to have that filter to process things.
It's funny that we would have this conversation, because part of what I'm lecturing about all around like the States now is how that patterns get replayed, right? So you could look at astrology and you could see a Saturn cycle, or you could see an eclipse cycle, and you could see cycles and patterns globally or in your own life. And what I'm finding right now is that some of the same patterns that I saw back in the late 80s, early 90s, are now back. Like the same type of, I feel like I have to protect people from like all of this stuff, and how there's a certain level of performance that's come into the subject matter. And I'm like, I feel like I'm at a psychic fair again, except the psychic fair is YouTube or TikTok, or it's whatever place that the person's, and if the me of today could time travel back to the me of doing crossing over, I legitimately would like pull myself off the stage and say, hey, listen, I'm you from the future. We have to have a quick chat. You have to get this point across. Not everybody's going to be a medium. And there's so many other modalities that people could actually work with and be amazing at, but they're not going to do that because they want to be famous. So they think they have to be a psychic medium in order to get a following. And that was the one part of crossing over I didn't really like, that it widened the road, but it paved the road as well. And then all these unlicensed drivers were now like, I'm a psychic medium, I'm a psychic medium. And using phrases that like came from crossing over, just stuff like that.
But you provided a language. The power of crossing over gave such a language to this. It was like it voiced things that I watched it at home. I was glued to it. You were glued to it as well. And you know, the books. But it gave us language. It gave validation. It gave a reason to say, here is someone who is doing this that we can actually watch live, and everybody's tuning in from home across the globe to watch this.
Yeah, there's a lot of responsibility.
No wonder that, you know, that people latched onto that language or said, well, I'm this, and this is the one lane that I'm in. And I think what we try to do in the podcast is bring in as many people from different lanes. And you know, I guess the spiritual as fuck thing is, it doesn't matter who you are. We all have our unique brand of gifts and spirituality that we bring. So yes, hindsight, is a wonderful thing to go back. But for that moment in time, for us and for so many people like us, like just know how profound it was. Like, cause
and that's the other thing I would probably tell myself. I would say, hey, this is going to be amazing for yourself and a lot of people. Have more fun. Like have more fun. Because I can honestly say that wasn't fun for me.
Really?
No, it was not fun. It was a very, very high pressured experience because I didn't quite trust the television network people. I didn't really trust the producers in the beginning. And here I felt like I was taxed with this responsibility of demonstrating. When I would walk on that show and the disc was like, the stage was like all lit up, I remember I would say, I'm standing on this disc of light, which I thought was a great metaphor. And I didn't design the set. That's how they designed the set. And I thought, wow, this is kind of really cool. And then early on, the first season and second season, they had these big sails around the black studio, these big white, like amorphous kind of, which I loved because it gave me a focal point to look at. Nobody ever asked me what my process was, but that's what was kind of created. So I kind of felt like the universe helped co-create all of that using,
built it around
using people. But I felt like when I walked onto that lit disc, I was walking on for every person who did this work for real.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like my show, it was my responsibility. And with that came a lot of stress,
Can I ask, was that, because this has been something that for me, I guess, being so, you know, just absolutely blown away by your work, and then a little bit of fading into the background for a while, and now the work that you do in Evolve Plus.
Yep.
Again, like, so it's almost like you've created this, your own safe space, your own safe community that's not necessarily available, like it's available to the masses within you.
So one of the people that helped get Crossing Over onto the air wound up working at Universal Studios in Florida, and she was involved in some executive capacity. And they opened up the Harry Potter exhibit there. Like it was like when it brand open. And I remember she like escorted us in and was giving us a tour. I'm saying like thousands of people like walking around everywhere. And I just had this moment, I was like looking around, and she looked at me and she goes, "What are you thinking right now?" I was like, "Nobody cares that I'm standing here."
Yeah.
I was like, it's such an awesome feeling.
Hallelujah.
I was like, nobody's like, and she looked at me and she said, "I'm glad that you got that part of your life back," because it wasn't fun for a while.
Yeah.
And not so much just from not that part, but the death threats and the like all the stalkers, and like that's the flip side of that. But she looked at me and she's like, "You know, it's not really a great thing that they don't recognize you anymore." She goes, "You kind of still want them to know who you are." I go, "I do." I said, "I want them to know who I am, but I don't want it from a fan standpoint. I want it from like a respect standpoint." So thank you for the intro.
Do you feel now that you're at that point?
I do.
Yeah.
And there's been moments where I've been like on like on TikTok, or I'll see somebody do something. I'm like, you know, somebody's got to say something. Like somebody's got to, like, you know, who was that person? I was like, wait, you're that person. Like you, I've been doing this long enough now. Yeah. So I don't really call people out because I don't want the energetic exchange with the person, but I will detail what they're doing and be like, if you guys see this, not cool, like not okay.
Yeah.
I love that. You're like the godfather of everything now.
It is, and like for us, on the people who listen to our podcast, because they're the ones who are, you know, for a lot of them, they're going through this for the first time, and that was what drove us to start the podcast. You know, there's no information out there. We felt that, you know, you're Googling all these terms, but to have, you know, with your life path, with the amount of people that you've touched, with the amount of influence that you have, being able to hear from you, your journey and your path and some of the choices that you've made. And yes, the big, you know, shining lights, the cameras are not always the greatest thing.
No.
It's choices, it's options. We can all create our own path.
I tell everybody that is embarking on a journey of development, if they're going to be working as a metaphysical practitioner, they have to try to leave people better than they find them. They have to make sure that they are very, very cautious about their words and how their words are being heard. There's got to be that ethical approach. There's a responsibility is kind of great. It's really all of that kind of, and to know that it's probably the most important thing. It's okay for them to be wrong. Like it's okay to be wrong. Like you have to strive to be accurate, but you don't always want to be perceived as right. And I've seen a lot of people in the field, you know, give what would be considered by my standards, like fluffy information.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, people go, "Oh my God, yes." And I'm like, but you didn't say anything.
Yeah.
You know? So I think it's always important to try to push the envelope. And like I said, I've been doing this for 4 decades now, and there's always buzzwords that you go through. Yeah. And now one of the buzzwords is empath. Everybody's walking around on social media. Everybody's an empath. And I'm like, wait, you guys don't realize what you're saying. Because when you say you're an empath, you're kind of coming across like remember Silly Putty?
Yes. Oh, I used to love
I love
that.
Silly Putty.
Silly Putty.
Oh, yeah.
And then you would like take it and you would go to like the newspaper and you would like put it on the cartoon, and then you would like pull it off and it would be there. So I kind of feel like being an empath is being like Silly Putty a little bit. Like you're kind of taking an imprint of someone else's energy, which is not always good if you're around people who are negative and toxic. So for somebody who considers themselves to be an empath, I try to get them to say, don't be an empath, be empathetic, but also recognize that as a highly sensitive person, as an intuitive, you got to protect that energy so that you can be in connection to someone who may be toxic or going through a toxic moment, and you don't have that spill over because you've created a boundary to say, no, I'm not feeling that. Yeah. Whereas when you say I am an empath, you're allowing that.
Yeah, you're giving permission.
So true.
Right.
Yeah. I'm interested to know, because we talk a lot about energy.
Sure.
I mean, I can be in a room and I can pick up so many people's energy. Do you have anything that you do, you know, if you're in the dressing room before you're about to get on stage, that protects you and gets you grounded? And what does it look like before a show?
So for me, it looks like very normal everywhere. I'm powered down. I actually protect my energy like a germaphobe.
Do you?
I really do.
Yeah.
So because my background comes out of healthcare, when you're in healthcare, you understand universal precautions, which means you kind of treat every patient, pre-pandemic, like always, you treat every patient as if they are potentially contagious and you don't want to transmit that to yourself or another person. So you gown up in mask in certain rooms, you doff and take everything off. If somebody's going to be doing surgery, a surgeon scrubs in, they do the surgery, they scrub out. So I kind of have that clinical mentality when it comes to energy. So I don't want to be scrubbed in all the time. I don't want to feel at a restaurant or on a plane or wherever it might be, or my family. Like, I don't want to pick up on somebody else's stuff. So I am powered down until I need to be powered up. And after so many years doing it, like the power up part comes very easy for me now.
How do you power down?
Powering down for me is usually food.
Is it really?
Food.
I have not heard that before.
Yeah, it's usually food. I don't like to eat.
Heavy food?
Usually just food, because when I'm actually working, I won't eat for hours before.
Oh, wow.
So, and then right before, it's chocolate and caffeine.
No way.
Okay.
That's all right, then I do that all
Yep.
the time.
Everybody's like, what's your secret? I'm like, chocolate and caffeine. And they go, no, really, what's your secret? I'm like, chocolate and caffeine.
No
But
way.
it shows that we all need to find what works for us, and there's trial and error in that. And like, you've had a lot of years
Yeah,
to be able
I've
to
had a lot of trial and a lot of error.
Yeah,
But
I love that you brought in the medical side of it, just the fact that you're kind of scrubbing in and scrubbing out, because my first job out of college was working, I worked in clean rooms, so it was the contamination, making sure that you're decontaminated, and I didn't realize, but that processing was brought into my coaching work. So I would always cleanse before, cleanse out was like I didn't realize. Now I know the energetics of it.
But isn't it interesting how the universe puts you in that position first?
To train that. Yeah.
So I was going to school for healthcare and public administration, basically to run hospitals and healthcare business stuff. And while I was working towards my master's, I didn't complete it, but while I was working towards my master's, I was like, I should probably get a job in a hospital. So I wound up getting a job as a phlebotomist.
Yes.
So here I am now.
So that's taking blood.
Taking somebody's blood. Yep. A venipuncturist, a vampire, a phlebotomist. I worked in the lab.
Yeah.
And I was in every part of the hospital. Every part. And I was really good at it. So people would page me to come and do the hard sticks. Yeah. So not only did I actually get to be in every part of the hospital, I got to see some really unique illnesses, right? Yeah. Now, I don't realize that all of this now is laying the groundwork for when I'm doing my readings, because I can go, oh, this is a respiratory problem because I'm seeing a respiratory. This is a CCU problem because I'm standing in CCU. And then literally argue with people when I'm doing a reading for them and be like, no, trust me, this is this. Somebody had a perforated bowel. Why? Because I was in an OR and I watched one. I know what I'm saying.
I need to ask on this because this is our listeners will know this is what I do, so I want to know the mechanics of how things work, and I'm drawing parallels between you and Liz here. Okay. So Liz is medium as well, and how you're saying that about it's like you're getting flashes back to your life circumstances that you're able to make sense of to translate then into the client that you're working with or the person that you're reading for. So you're actually seeing whether an OR or a part in the hospital from my
life experience.
That is because people that misconception of people thinking that everything is seen before them. I see a full person in front of me, or I see a full vision. It's like it's your life experience.
So I get a lot of people's house stuff. I'll see their houses.
Okay.
And I remember I was doing a private reading for a woman, and I was actually describing my aunt's house. So I'm describing her house. Yeah. But I know that the layout of this woman's house is my aunt's house. So I'm taking her through the house, and she's like, yes, yes, yes. And then you have this here, and then you have that here. And then I go, and then when we go upstairs, and she leaned over and she goes, wait, I didn't make my bed today. And I looked at her. And I looked at her and I went, what? And I went, oh, no. I said, you're good. I go, no, I get it. Yeah. But she got paranoid. He's going to think I don't clean my house. But that's how accurate it was in what they were showing me. So it's always going to come through in our frame of reference. So I feel very, very lucky that I had the hospital experience, and it gave me that. And that's what I draw upon. And movies, to be honest.
Oh, really?
Tell us about movies, how that works.
I managed a video store. So
Oh, did you really?
yeah.
Okay.
And because I managed a video store, seeing the boxes and knowing the movies, I would get a lot of information based upon what I would see.
Can you give us an example of that, just so?
A very obvious example was somebody was in a really bad relationship, and I saw Fatal Attraction. So I knew that there was, I knew that was an issue. And then I have a little bit of a photographic memory. So like, I know that the movie Jaws was the number 312 in the store. So
wow.
Yeah, I know it's stupid. It's like Fatal Attraction was 6402. Like it stays in my head.
That's a talent.
Yeah, well, I guess you're seeing it over and over again. And I was doing a reading for somebody once, and I kept seeing Jaws. And I'm like, Jaws but not Jaws? I'm like, Jaws but not Jaws. And then I was, Jaws from Moonraker? I was trying to figure out like why Jaws. And then I was like, can I ask you, does March 12th have a meaning to you? And they were like, oh, that's their birthday.
Oh,
312.
wow. Don't you just love that?
It's that for me, the sense of awe of that's the kind of information that you're dealing with, that all this information is coming down and you have to make sense with it.
You're a translator.
Yeah. And we have to get out of the way of it.
Yeah.
Like you have to be able to trust. So for me, I always tell people, I have a rock in front of me when I'm doing my virtual Zoom groups that says trust.
Okay. Yeah.
And it is a touchstone for me to like, remember, you have to trust the information. And sometimes you look bad. Like sometimes you will look actually inaccurate while you're giving someone information, and they're going to look at you like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And you have to trust that you're getting what you're getting, and sometimes leave it like that. I was in LA last year, and I read for a woman. Her mom and dad came through, and her mom and dad were coming through a whole bunch of stuff that she validated all of it. But one of the things that I kept seeing was the story about the banana. What's the reference to the banana? Like it was like over and over with the banana. And she was funny. She was like, dude, you're like 100% if you drop the banana.
Okay.
She was like, if you don't drop the banana, she's like, I'm gonna have to take points off, kind of the vibe. And I was like, listen, I need to leave this with you. This has a meaning. So when she got home, her brother called her and said what happened, and she goes, Mommy, Daddy came through, and they referenced something about a banana. I don't know what the banana is. He sent her a photo of his son sleeping, holding a stuffed banana.
Oh, wow.
Apparently it's from a game called Fortnite, and there was some reference to the banana, whatever, and that was mom and dad's way of acknowledging their grandson. But the woman that I was reading did not know that.
Wow, I love
So
that.
the validation came after the fact. But what if I didn't trust that?
And I love that about you, because when you have a point to make, you will stick at that point until someone else does.
Yep.
Diane sent me a clip yesterday.
So this is my favorite from, and I don't even know whether it was crossing over. I do remember it, and then I was so happy when I found it on YouTube. And it was you're in front of a live audience, and you're really focusing on one area, and you're up the back, and you're trying to say it's here, it's between this person, and you can't. But it turns out to be a parking attendant.
Oh my God, that's
Behind the wall.
Even now,
It's so weird that you're bringing this up, because somebody just asked me not too long ago what was one of my standout moments on the show. That's the one. That's the example that I used. His name was Basil.
Oh,
and
yes.
Yeah, his name was Basil, and I remember, oh my God, that was like forever. Like I was legitimately forever. Like it was longer than that was longer than what you even saw. Yeah. And I remember, this is the not trusting the TV people part. Yes. So right behind where I was reading that section was a door to the outside, to where the parking garage was. There was like an alleyway that was there. So Basil, I think, was talking to two police officers. So one of the production assistants, good on him, went behind, opened the door, and said to the two New York cops, either one of you got a whatever? And they were like, no. And then Basil was like, I guess I do. So here I am on the disc, and the director came over the PA and said, hey, we think we found what you're looking for. And I turned around, and there he is in his red shirt, whatever. And I'm like, wait a minute, like, why is the guy that parked my car like standing in the studio? Like my brain wasn't, and then I was like, oh my God, they're trying to make TV. I'm like, so they go, tell him what you got. And I went, no, you tell me what they told you.
That's right.
That's right, because I watched this recently, and I've sent it to my family because I was having a moment of, oh my God,
I cottoned on to that too, and I was like, oh, he's been very smart there.
I was like, no, you tell me what they told you. And I had repeated myself so often to the audience that there were things that I forgot, because I was like, oh my God, like this is actually his family coming through from Jamaica or whatever it was. And two of the people in the audience yelled out, "What about the bicycle?" And I was like, yeah, Basil, what about the bicycle? Because I had said it so often. Yeah. And then I got really nervous after that reading was over. And the reason why I got nervous was like, oh my God, like, how do we keep this in the studio? Because like, I don't want to be like out on the streets. I didn't want to be that.
Yeah, and it's I guess if you're paying for a ticket to a show, there's permission and intention that goes with that. Whereas if you're Basil out in the parking lot.
And that to me is really important that you just said that. Permission and intention. And I think that so many people in our community of practitioners don't think that they need permission, because their ego gets in the way and they think, oh, I could do this and I can do this and I'm going to do this. And a lot of people will say, like, have you ever had to stop and walk across the street and tell somebody? And I'm like, no. No, because it's wrong. So I always use a really crass example when somebody asks me that question, and then I put it back to the audience and I'll say, if I was the top breast surgeon in the United States, and I am world renowned for my surgeries and reconstruction for anybody that's dealt with double mastectomies and blah, 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 blah. And they're like, yeah. And I go, and I'm on vacation in Miami, and I am walking through cereal aisle of Publix, and I see a woman in a bikini top reaching for the Cheerios, and I happen to notice that she's got a mass or a lump. Now I am the top breast surgeon in the country. If I walk up to her and say, excuse me, I happen to be the top, breast surgeon, and I start palpating, her breast in the aisle 5 of the cereal section, would that be okay? And usually they're like, absolutely not. And I go, what makes it okay for a medium to walk up to somebody on the street, in a store, in a shopping market? I go, you don't know where somebody is on their journey of grief. I said, it's got to be really, really careful. So I always tell people that it's really important.
I think any spiritual gift, because I think of healers as well. So today I had someone who offered and just said, oh, we'll send you some, healing energy. And I'm like, I
don't want the healing energy.
But for me, it's like, no, I didn't invite that. And not that it's anything against them, but for me, it's like, I will invite or I will choose. And I'm very discerning about who I work with.
That's all ego.
I choose,
But that's all people's ego. And I think the subject...
also wanting to come from a good... I think
it's ego.
Actually, you're right.
It's ego. Because you have to actually want to do it. You have to allow yourself to do it. And I'm the opposite. Like, since I was a kid, like before people knew who I was, like 16, 17 years old, people would be like, read this person. I'm like, no, I'm good. No, I'm like, I wanted to do it when I had to do it. Not when I didn't have to do it.
Yes, so true.
And I've had those moments, and I blame it on my youth. I remember being at a psychic fair in Manhattan, and I don't normally eat, as I said. And this one day I got really hungry. I was like, wow, I don't think I'm gonna make it through the day. So I ran downstairs when I'm in Manhattan, so the street vendors. And as I'm waiting to order a hot dog from the street vendor, there was a woman getting ready to cross the street. I was already open. So I was like, I'm like, excuse me. And she was like, yes. I go, are you Kathy? And she was like, yes, you don't know me. I said, I'm doing psychic readings here. This is a psychic fair. I go, I just came down to get lunch. I go, but I think your dad's passed. I go, and I think today's your birthday. I said, and I want to wish you a happy birthday from your dad. And she looked at me, half of her wanted to run across the street. The other half got emotional. And I felt amazing. I was like, oh my God, this is why I had to come get a hot dog. That was that moment. It was an ego hit. It wasn't anything, I got my hot dog, went back upstairs, and I read for, if that was 12:30, probably about 6 hours after that. So I was one of the last practitioners to leave. When I walked out the room, there was Kathy. And I was like, hey, do you work here? And she went, no. I go, what are you doing here? She goes, oh, I don't know. Some strange guy walks up to me on the street, knew it was my birthday, wished me a happy birthday from my dead father. I've been waiting to know what's the message? What was in that moment, I was so drained that I didn't have anything in me. I looked at her and I'm like, oh my God, I am so sorry. I go, that was a conversation that happened 6 hours ago. I can't make that happen again. And I hope that was your dad's way of letting you know. He guided me down there probably. I tried to spin that in the most positive way. And she just looked at me like, what an asshole. And I ruined her birthday. Like, I know that so much so that when Crossing Over was on the air, they came running up into the green room because we were getting ready to tape, and they go, "We want you to see the promo live on." And they turned the TV on, and there was the promo, me walking towards the camera. And they go, "What do you think?" And they looked at me like I was crazy. I went, "I'm thinking that right about now, there's a woman named Kathy out there that's going, that's the asshole who messed up my birthday."
Oh, you've been really hard on yourself.
No, but that's how I am.
But I love that. I appreciate that so much, because I think that, and again, for people who are coming out for the first time and they're figuring out what all of this is, and they're like, I instantly went there, which was, oh no, people are trying to do good, and that is misguided. And we need to hear the war stories almost from people who have been through this and kind of, okay, not everything that we think we're doing. Right. And, for some people, it's like they're not even realizing that they're operating from a place of
like ambush reading, attack reading is not, it's not okay. You can spin it any way you like. It's just not okay.
Yeah. And I think, obviously you're working a lot of the time with people that are in grief, and you never know what stage of grief someone's in. Right. How do you deal with that? Those readings that someone's really upset, or because it's such a big responsibility. And I guess you're part of the healing of that person. So
I feel like the insights that come through can be healing, but we as mediums can't be the healer.
Yes. Yeah.
So I kind of equate it to fitness. It's like spiritual fitness. So I use the analogy that if somebody was, they lose a loved one, and the next morning they woke up 200 pounds heavier than they were physically. Yeah. I said, "Do you think the world would notice?" And they go, "Yeah." I go, "Do you think that you would be able to navigate the world in the same way? Or would you have to navigate the world 250 pounds heavier?" And they were like, "Yeah." I go, "Well, grief is 250 pounds heavier. You're navigating an invisible 250 pounds. And like body fat, it doesn't go away by itself. You have to work at it." Yeah. And so many people don't work at their grief. They just walk around 200 pounds heavier, and people don't see it. People just react to it. So I like to navigate it by naming it, acknowledging it, talking about it. I like everybody to know that the first year of loss is what I refer to as the coasting year. The second year of loss is the year where you get like the rug pulled out from underneath you because you're not expecting it, and you've already gone through the firsts. So all the people that were there to support you go back to their lives like, "Good job on us, we helped you." And that second year, people are like, "What's wrong with me? I don't want to say anything because like everybody was so helpful, but I feel worse, like there's something wrong with me." So I always tell, if you're in the second year of loss, you're not crazy. It's really important for people to recognize their own feelings and acknowledge that. And then the far other side of the spectrum is I always tell people that grief does not yield entitlement. So just because someone's grieving, their grief is not more significant or important than another person's. Yes. So if I'm working with an audience of people and someone's got anger issues because they've lost their whomever, that will now be directed at the medium because we represent the concept of death, which took that person away. So there becomes a resistance dynamic. So sometimes you have to like navigate that. And I'll tell people like, you might leave here not liking me, but you'll leave here with the information.
Okay, yeah, because I know one of the things that we'd spoken about is that, like, so I've got my ticket to Sydney. I'm going with a good friend, and it's in that moment, everybody's going with a hope. I'm going to see John Edward. Right. I want to see someone, I want to hear a message from whoever it might be. But number one, that person might not come through for you on the day. But number two, you might not be the person that you're choosing to bring a message for. But there's so many people who are left in the audience then feeling that sense of, oh, well, I didn't get chosen, or my person didn't come through. Is there anything that you'd like to say to those people, to the people who don't get the message on the night through all of the shows?
I probably will say it when I do the events, because I say it at all my events. I used to think that an event was for the people who got read. And then I realized the events are not for the people who got read. An actual event, whether there's 10 people in a room or 10,000 people in a room, the events are for the people who are not read. Because whoever comes through becomes the textbook and teaching souls for that specific class. So if I have 5 events in one city, I'm going to have 5 very different events because of the audiences that come, the lessons that they need to hear, the people who pass, who come through to teach those lessons. And I recognize that the people who come through are the teaching souls for everybody else that's there. So if you're doing a reading, let's say it's a 2-hour event, and you read somebody at the first half hour of the 2-hour event, and then you move on to the next family, you lose that person for a good half hour, because now they're in the subjective place of, why did they come through with that? Why didn't they say that? I thought they would have said this. How come this person didn't come through? Meanwhile, you could read 3 other families. That person is no longer listening, but the person who's not read, not only are they listening, they are wearing everybody's experience. And that's how their loved one and friend gets them to understand the concept, how it's not about the message. It's not about them getting the message. It's about the process that they don't need the medium in order to get the message, that we're all connected.
Yeah, I love that.
And everyone leaves with a message.
If they allow that.
Yeah,
But like
absolutely.
last week, I was in Carteret, New Jersey. There were 1,200 people in the room. And the event was high energy. It was a real fun night for me as the medium. Sometimes they're not always fun. It was a real fun night. The appreciation in the audience was there. So many people on social media were saying the most amazing things, and they weren't read. And there was one woman who apparently in the balcony or wherever she was in the room had her hand up, and the people running the mics in the theater didn't give her the mic 3 separate times. There's 1,200 people in the room. And she literally had the, I say, audacity to write on the Evolve Plus forum that, you know, she was denied the mic 3 separate times, and that took away the magic of her experience. And in that moment on the platform, I wrote back, hey, I don't do whiny. This might not be the place for you. You might want to like shuffle off some other place. I'm not the person for you. And then she wrote back, I can't imagine John Edward would say that. His PR team needs to be addressed.
You heard it here.
No, John Edward said it, Nancy.
This is why John Edward is on Spiritual as Fuck, obviously.
Exactly. And that is, in a nutshell, spiritual as fuck. It's like you're just your own unique brand, doing your own thing.
Yeah, like I'm not gonna like my cousin runs my office and she's like the vice president of JE everything, and she will not let me on Facebook. She literally changes the password on Facebook.
Turning away the fans.
No, because she knows like I don't care. Like I know there's like 1 million plus people that are on there. I want to teach to the people that want to be taught.
True. Yeah.
Like I'm not in the like I've had the fame and the notoriety and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It doesn't impress me. Like I can say that because I had it.
Yeah.
So my daughter's an actress, and she's been acting since she's 2 or 3 years old. And one of the things that she did early on was a commercial for a utility company, a radio commercial. Yeah. And we were driving, and she said, we're going to Manhattan. She goes, oh, I hope I hear my commercial. I went, you do? I go, did you not hear it? And she goes, no, I heard it. I go, oh, so they sent it to you? And she went, yeah. I went, I go, so why do you want to hear it on the radio? And she goes, I don't know. I think it would be kind of cool. I was like, oh. My wife's sitting next to me, and I'm like, why do you think it would be cool? And I just let her keep going. And then she goes, I don't know, because it would make me feel famous. And like, I was possessed from The Exorcist. I turned around and I was like, you will never be famous as long as there's breath in this body. And she looked at me like that. And my wife looked at me like, what is wrong with you? I said, fame is something that comes and goes. And if you define yourself by fame, then you're allowing somebody else to define you. Yeah. I said, you can be accomplished and you can achieve, because those are things that nobody can take away from you. So if anybody's doing anything in this work, do not strive for fame, strive for accomplishment and achievement, because when you have that, nobody can take that from you.
Wow, that is, and like, because your daughter is acting for so long now and
now she's 16 and a half, and I keep teasing her like, you need to get a job.
Your daughter is 16 and a half. Yep. Your son is what, 18, 19?
He's going to be 21 in September.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Okay.
And do they show any signs of following your career here?
They have the ability.
Do
but
they?
My son's going to be a doctor. Yeah. So he kind of went into healthcare. Which, by the way, I never would have predicted, ironically. Yeah. But I felt, and this was a great place to actually I can have this conversation, because most people don't care. But as a parent, I wanted them to understand who they are. And I didn't want them to go through what people would consider to be a rite of passage, like making mistakes with alcohol or drugs or all that kind of stuff. I'm like, listen, I'm going to be almost intolerant when it comes to making silly teenage mistakes. I was like, because people make those mistakes because they want to know who they are. I've made you guys know who you are through doing your astrological charts, doing your numerology, like doing all of that. I go, so there's no, oh, I'm trying to find myself. There you are, like right there. Like, here you go, right? So we can have those conversations. Yeah. I go, it'll make you slightly unpopular while you're a teenager. I go, but you're going to be leaps and bounds ahead of all the folks that are in the same age category. So when my son was probably around maybe 13, freshman in high school, 14, somewhere in there, I said, pick an astrologer. I gave him 4 astrologers. I let him pick the person. He picked this gentleman named Samuel Reynolds, amazing astrologer in the States.
Okay, so I'm going to write that down.
Samuel, yes, he's amazing.
In the show notes, just
Samuel Reynolds. I think he's unlockastrology.com.
Okay,
I think that's him. And he did Justin's chart, and then Justin studied with him for a while. And after he did, I think he did his chart reading with Justin. Justin announced to my wife and I that he was going to be a heart surgeon, and we were like, "Oh, okay." And if you would have asked us before that what we thought he was going to do, we would have been like engineer, architect. He's very like mechanical.
Just engineering hearts.
Yeah, he's just got that kind of like vibe. And so we were like, and Sandra's like really supportive. And then he like walked up to his room, and she just went, "Have you seen him cut a steak?" Like, that was her first reaction. Yeah, she's like, "Have you seen him cut?" I was like, I think we got a ways before surgery is going to happen. Yeah. But he's still on that path. He's on that path to do something within the healthcare field. And that's all because he studied his chart. That's all because he looked at his blueprint.
I also love on that as well. It's the fact that like where the world is going, and the more, awakened, or the more people are getting tuned into their gifts, it's like not everybody needs to be a psychic medium or a healer or that. It's like, but if you were a surgeon with psychic abilities or intuitive abilities, that just brings your, your gifts to a whole new level.
So I use this analogy. My wife's family's Portuguese. They speak Portuguese. Like the kids learn Portuguese. They speak Portuguese to their grandparents and to their mom. They don't speak Portuguese in school. And I would say, why don't you speak Portuguese in school? Well, nobody understands me. Well, daddy's language is energy. So they speak energy. Yeah. So it's like that. It's not a gift. It's just a lens. They look at life through that lens. And I think the more information people have about themselves, the more understanding they have about who they are, their blueprint, they can go, oh, I understand that, as an Aquarian, they had a tough 2.5 years because they were going through a Saturn transit. Like they could look at what that is. So we have the information available to us. And you're right.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be being a medium.
Yeah. I need to ask this. I know I am conscious of time, and we could ask a million questions. But so as a psychic medium, and I know you've mentioned astrology a few times, but who do you go to, or do you go to anyone for readings, and what kind of readings?
So I don't really, because I know a lot of people, and because of the Evolve platform, I'm connected to folks. Yeah. I have a great number of people that I can have conversations with. Yes. And in those conversations, information happens.
Get the messages.
Yeah. So it's not like I go for a reading per se. But I'm really lucky. I have like some good psychic friends. So sometimes information will just kind of happen. Or if I have to make a decision, like I'll call up Lisa Salvatore and say, hey, I need to do this. What are you seeing on this? And that'll happen over a conversation.
Okay.
Oh, I love that.
I know one of the, I think it was a podcast I'd listened to, and I think it may have been around 9/11 and some of the heaviness that you were going through at that point in time. And I think one of the things you'd said was around, you would encourage people to go to your astrologer first and your therapist second.
Yep.
Like, don't go to the medium, go to the astrologer.
Go to the astrologer.
Like I mulled on that. That was like, oh, that's really interesting.
Yeah, because a lot of people want to go to the medium because they think that their loved one and friend is going to come through and tell them what to do. And I'm like, if a medium's telling you what to do, it's the medium who's giving you their spin on what they're getting. Because nobody in spirit's going to come through and tell you what to do, because then they would take on the karma for your actions. Yeah. I was like, we have to be empowered to make our choices. Yeah, we have to be that person. And folks would be like, why are you telling people to go to, you're a medium. Like, do you do astrology? I'm like, no, I don't do astrology. And they're like, why are you sending them to astrologers? I'm like, because that's the blueprint of the house that they're living in. And if you're going to make any changes to that house, you got to check the blueprint.
Yeah. And the astrologers listening are all thinking, yes, validation for the work that we do. Thank you, John. Exactly.
God, it's been an absolute pleasure
Thank you,
having
guys.
you
This
on the
is amazing.
show. Obviously, you're in Australia now, and you're in Australia at the end of the year to tour, and you're going absolutely everywhere.
I am.
And we're obviously going to post all of the details on where you can get your tickets in the show notes, and we'll definitely be there.
Yes, I'll be in
Shouting
Sydney,
from the
you'll
back.
be in Melbourne, there'll be bits of us everywhere, and we'll
Thank
be
you,
doing
thank you,
shouts out
thank you.
between now and then as well. And I will definitely make sure that YouTube video, the one that we mentioned about Basil, who is now forever famous through this clip, we'll make sure that people can see that, because that was...
It's so weird that you guys were such a random, obscure reference. And I just, at an event last week, told it.
Oh.
For the first time in a long, long time.
And we had a recent episode
weird.
on signs and synchronicities, and the fact that you're saying
It's a sign for sure.
there's the synchronicity, it's come
Love
back
it.
to you.
Love it. Well,
Yeah.
good luck with everything, guys.
Thank you. And we've got a little gift for you, because we're like, we
yes.
can't, have you in Australia.
And you
without-
mentioned food helps you ground.
We've
my
never
goodness.
bought anybody cupcakes before, so you're the first. This is very special, let me tell
I
you.
love cupcakes.
So we thought we'd get you some spiritual as fuck podcast.
Oh my God. Thank you so much. Thank you.
They're actually delicious as well.
They look delicious.
You don't know how hard it was for us not to eat them.
I think maybe we should have one.
we
They're for you.
They're
Oh,
for
this
you.
is so sweet. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
If you want to experience John Edward live, he has events across the US from July, and then he is coming down under in October and November. Tickets are selling fast, so go straight to www.johnedward.net to book your tickets now. Also, due to popular demand, our online event, The Channel, is happening again on the 26th of July at 7 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time. Head to spiritualaf.co/events to grab your tickets. That's it for another episode.
Thank you for listening. Did you know that we are building a movement of 1 million people who are spiritual as fuck? We would love for you to join us. You can start by leaving us a review on Apple Podcast. Every month, I'm going to intuitively choose one person and do a psychic reading for you. So,
Follow us on Instagram, send in your stories and topic suggestions, and join the movement
at spiritual.a.f. Until next time.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.